Okay, hello and welcome back, my friends. This is going to be the second in a series that I hope lasts quite a while that I am calling The State of the Game. And it's kind of basically a month in review, as well as a peek into the month to come, just to give everyone an idea of what's going on in the game, keep you up to date, and hopefully prepare you with the information you need to succeed moving forward. So, as you can see, I have a list here of the things that I will be covering in this particular video. So we're going to start out with the power creep tracker. Then we have a review of the 20 gem pull challenge. That was for the super elementals. We'll talk about the newly released Kavala event and the nice changes they've made with that. Then we will go into review over the Titan bounty and the costumer and things that I think would be a little bit better if we could fix or improve upon those. Then we'll touch on the the faded summon fiasco that happened this past month. We'll go into the meta changes and then review the August calendar. So hang tight. This is a little bit of a longer video, much like I suggested in the last one of these that I created. I highly recommend that you sort of just listen to this at your convenience. It's kind of more like a podcast than a quick video, but it still is full of information, which I think will be useful to you. And you can, of course, come back and listen again at a later point if that's convenient. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move into the next topic, which will be the Power Creep Tracker. Okay, so I again started this last month for the first time. I think it's a very important tool that we can all use to help us gauge how under control the power creep is in this game. When I say under control, I mean sometimes it can go crazy high, sometimes it can go crazy low, but we'll talk about where the goal should be and where we are at each month to get an idea of what we're looking at for the power creep. So, as you can see, I've been tracking this year, starting with January. The CP of the characters released at the start of the month compared to the CP of the characters released at the end of the month, there was an 18 CP difference. And then February was 14. March and April was 6 to 7. And then May was 10. June was our big offender at 37. And this past month was 13. So if you're unfamiliar with power creep, basically it is a mechanic that is used within the game to allow newer characters to be more significant than older characters. This is a bit of a marketing ploy, but it's an important one that exists within the game because this game exists for profit. We're all aware of that. We need that to be true in order for them to continue to produce content and create things for this game. So we all have to accept a certain level of power creep. Now, if it starts getting too high, this is where we have a problem because it's going to make the characters that you gain become insignificant too quickly. If it's too low, then they're not making enough money on their end by incentivizing their newer releases compared to the older things. So, because of that, I made a decision that I think an appropriate power creep should be around 10 CP a month. Now, I'll even go up to 15, so the 10 to 15 bracket will fall into what I would consider to be acceptable. 15 would be kind of high for the month, 10 would be ideal. Below that point would be ideal, or would be even better. So, as you see, I put March and April in green. They only went up by 6 and 7 CP that month. That's phenomenal. That is what we like to see. However, June here at 37 is quite a bit more. I mean, if my goal is to say, let's say even 12, that's 3 times the goal. So June was a big offender, and we saw some giant CP jumps in June. July, it seems like they brought us back into a more reasonable range. We are at 13 CP gained. That's right in the 10 to 15 range. So I think we're back on track for keeping things under control. But unfortunately, you can't put the CP back, right? So like once we do these big jumps, it creates a plateau and a new normal. So we have to keep going up from there. So we hope not to see any more of these red labeled months where it's above the ideal rate. But just understand this past month, 13 CP. All right, so I think that gives you an idea. It also says that our year-to-date gain has been 105. So this is the beginning of January to now. We've seen 105 increase in CP. By the end of the year, I'd like to see that hopefully stay under 200, but we'll see what they do with the next couple months and how that all plays out. All right, so that pretty much covers this topic. Now let's go ahead and move into our next one. All right, so this past month did bring us another gem summon challenge. This time around, they decided to go 20 gems. So they started with 10, then they went to 30, and then they did the 20 gem summon challenge. They featured the super elemental family this time around as well, with the 10 heroes featured below. So looking over these characters, there's some interesting choices here, but I think what's most important to point out is that there is really only 2 of these characters that were offered with costumes. The rest of the super elementals at this point are all starting to drop off the power chain quite a bit, so I feel like the only way you were getting something modern was if you got one of these 2 heroes, and that's only going to be a 20% chance. There were some other ones that were viable. Gasteel and Farah both still have purposes within this game, so those are 2 more that I would consider to be a pretty reasonable pull out of this for sure. And so that gives us 4 out of 10 as good choices, but that's still only 40%, which means there's a 60% chance you're going to get something that's dated that you may even choose not to level, because in reality, by the time you level and invest mats and everything else, these characters might already be falling off your war depth. I'm not a big fan of this idea. If you are to get a guaranteed 5-star, I liked it better when they did the approach of doing the fawns and the owls for 30, because yes, 30 gem pulls is a lot. I won't argue that. It's very expensive to buy into that particular challenge, but at least you got something that had real viability, something that would be worth investing into. And I think that is the key. If you want to keep these gem summon challenges interesting and favorable to the people to participate in, you need to offer something of significance to them. So I really hope that in the future we get more exciting options. Even if they continue to leave it at 30 polls, I think it's worth doing the additional 10 poll to get a viable character that's actually worth leveling, as opposed to getting a bunch of this older stuff, which really might just sit in our roster taking up space, or eventually be fed away to faded summons, which I guess is helpful in its own way, but not necessarily worth investing this many gems into polls. So um, with that in mind, like, I highly recommend that you're cautious with which gem pool challenges you're investing into. Every one so far has had some benefit, but I feel like you have to be incredibly careful of your expectation level, because some of these heroes are very popular heroes. But again, with the power creep constantly moving forward, you just have to think, is it worth investing in at this point in the game to get this character up? Or would I be better served saving my limited resource mats towards a newer character poll that may end up happening for me? So just keep that in mind, everyone. I do like these characters. Gestiel is amazing for Titans, still very sought after for that reason. The 2 costume characters, of course, have elite stats since they were just released. And Pharah, again, is another wonderful Titan hero, would definitely be helpful for people, but still questionable at this point if you want to invest Alpha Aethers into Pharah. She will probably eventually get a costume, which is great, but then you have the difficulty of pulling the costume as well. So it's a cool concept. Just buyer beware that there's probably only a 20% chance you're going to get something amazing in these polls, so it is a lot of gambling involved. All right. So this pretty much covers our super elemental wrap up for the week or the month, and we will move on to our next topic. All right. So next up, let's get into the new seasonal event that has started. The Kabbalah for 2025 seasonal event has honestly brought us some of the best heroes I think I've ever seen in a seasonal portal since I've started playing. And I did want to take a moment to be thankful for that, and to thank Small Giant and Empires and Puzzles development team for accepting the fact that we need these seasonal characters to be a little bit better. They used to always lag behind in the CP department, and their specials were somewhat lackluster in a way. They were okay, but nothing that was really that impressive. And it was mostly because they were easier to obtain, right? These characters were easy enough for most players to get their hands on that they specifically lowered their value because of that. They seem to have moved away from that approach, which I think is one of the best things we've seen out of them this year. So the characters released in this portal are at the top of the CP chart. Like, they were above everything that came out before them. Even the Astral Dwarf portal right before them, they still had higher CP. So they're staying in line with new releases, and that's fantastic. Then the next question becomes, where are we at for the specials? Well, in this particular case, they have released 3 characters that are absolutely phenomenal. And I'm going to murder their names, so just bear with me. I'm not even going to bother trying. I'm just going to describe them. So the first one up is going to be the green fish monster guy. He has a nice little trident, but what's most important about this character, and what I would love to take a moment to feature, is the fact that he is going to be a fast sniper that creates a Mega Fiend. Now, I need you to understand how amazing that truly is, because Mega Fiends in this game have only belonged to a single family, and that would be the Moths. Outside of that, they don't exist. So this is the first character that Empires and Puzzles has decided to expand Mega Fiends into, and it wasn't locked behind a paywall, really. It is a seasonal character, which the majority of players have a good chance to be able to get. This is a real gift, in my opinion, to the general playing audience, and says, hey, we are going to give you some of the more sought after abilities in these seasonal portals because we think you guys deserve a chance to get these characters. So let's be thankful for that, because I do think that this green 5-star release is a monster and one that everyone should be trying to get for their roster. It's very similar to Grovert in its own way, because they're both fast Mega Fiend creators. Their Mega Fiends exist on the same level. They both will be hitting for 270% attack. They both require 70% healing to clear. So just understand that they didn't skimp on this guy. He is right up there. So definitely recommend that you look forward to that. Then they also introduced a brand new Resurrector in the Mother Lemekanian, whatever her name is. She is actually a phenomenal reser for this seasonal portal as well. If you let's just put her in comparison to like Mother North, right? They're both mothers, sure, why not? So Mother North is going to give you the same res percentage, so they're even there. Mother North is going to give you a heal over time that is not as impressive as this new one. Uh, and unfortunately, Mother North, in some of her situations, healed before she even rezzed. So the special didn't operate in the correct order. Here, you're getting everything in the correct order. Plus, you're going to get a chance for this character to debuff the opposing team's defense to specials by, I think it was 50% for 5 turns or something like that, or 40%. Anyways, it's a significant chunk of defense down to special skills, which of course will stack with regular defense down as well. Really a fantastic character to be offering. Definitely the best Resurrector out of a seasonal portal that we have available to us. And then finally, they did an upgrade by giving Louis a costume. Louis, he was like very middle of the road when I first looked at him, but let's be honest, the guy's pretty cool because he's a priority dispel, right? There's an average speed priority dispel for the entire opposing party. He hits them all with a moderate hit, and then he gives them all defense down. Yeah, it's only 30% defense down. It's not necessarily the craziest of specials, but that hit all priority dispel is always a setup that you want in your roster somewhere. And his stats are great to boot. So, like, just understand that all of these characters are worth pulling for and worth leveling if you get them. There isn't even a question about that. You go ahead and level them. So I'm very excited that Kavala is showing us that they are willing to really reach down and create value in these seasonal summons. I hope that they continue with this moving forward. I would love to see some really cool like Halloween and Christmas event heroes too, to just kind of really make this an exciting end to the year. And I think a lot of people enjoy collecting these holiday heroes just because they're a little bit fun, a little bit goofy, but also we would like them to be a little bit useful, and they have hit that mark. So congratulations to anyone who pulls these guys. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic for tonight. All right, into the next section, I like to talk about quality of life changes within the game. We have a couple things to discuss in this particular department, and I want to start off with the fact that we just had the visiting costumer. I was a big fan when they first introduced this idea. I thought this is something that was 100% needed for the game. There's nothing more frustrating than having some really cool characters, seeing their costume released, and then just having no way to get your hands on that costume because you have to pull it at an extremely hard pull rate once again in order to benefit from using that character in its new upgraded form. So when they introduced this, I said, heck, this is pretty cool. Even if it's a year and a half old, I like it. It's a really neat idea. Well, since then, they have decided to grace us, and actually this is a very positive thing. They have added costumes to the majority of the portals. So when you are now pulling your new characters, you get the costume automatically along with them in the majority of all of the portals you are pulling from. This is definitely an ideal choice, and I think it's where I want the game to stay. Like, I don't want them to take that back away, but in doing so, what they did was create a bit of a problem where the value in the visiting costumer isn't necessarily there as much. Mostly because at this point, if you're pulling all these characters with their costumes already, there is less of a need to invest in a costumer to get them, if that makes sense. So the costumer is still very useful, but mostly to like older players that have collected a lot of these things before these portals were spitting out the costumes with the characters. So yes, I do think there's value in that, but I also think that a lot of players have very limited options. This time around for costumer, for example, I only had 2 options, literally just 2, that were available to me, which I think is kind of limiting in its own way. I would like for there to be a little more variety, a little more selection in this particular department. For those who are curious what 2, I had Guardian Kong and Toon Vivica. Now, those are both good choices. Guardian Kong, unfortunately, is falling off in the stats department. Even maxed out, he's only like 1280 or something like that. I chose to go with Toon Viv because I just think she has better longevity moving into the future. Although Kong's Reflect, absolutely amazing. It's so fun to watch. He's just not staying up on the stats. In order to make Visiting Costumer more appealing to the general public, I think that they need to reconsider how they approach this. At current, they are only allowing you to select a singular costume for a character with each outfitter that's coming up. Well, with all of these new characters coming with their costumes now, I think one positive change that I would like for them to consider is to allow you to select all the costumes available for that singular character when the costumer comes around. Why this matters? Well, a lot of us will get a random season 1 5-star out of portals that do not come with a costume, right? So those are really, for most people, probably soul exchange bait. But what if they allowed the customer to let you select all the available costumes? In other words, let's say I had pulled Viv for the first time ever, but I had zero costumes or zero costumes for her, and the customer came up this time around, and I was still able to select the toon, but it gave me the previous costumes as well. This would allow me to make a season 1 a viable character once every 3 months. And some of you might be saying, oh, that's too much. Maybe they're just giving you too much. People will be able to make all these viable characters. Okay. But the problem is you're not getting the most recent costume. You're not going to get glass. All right. So even if someone fully invests in these costumes, right, they're going to get a character who's not top of the line, and it's going to use materials, quite a bit of materials, between leveling all of the costumes and everything else just to get a below par character still. So I don't think you're offering too much per se, especially considering if they use their mats on that character, then if they pull a brand new character, maybe they don't have enough Aethers anymore, whatever the case may be, it's not going to create an unfair situation because they are still limited by the number of mats required to level these characters. I just think it would allow for people to have greater variety and some excitement in the idea of pulling even a random season 1 out of a portal somewhere. If you knew you could say, hey, you know what, next costumer though, I can turn this into something that might be viable for me, I think more people would feel like there was value in pulling these season 1 5-stars out of portals. So that's my thought on the visiting customer. The next thing I want to get into is Titan bounty buffing. I think this I touched on in my last video as well, where I would like them to consider raising the floor on the Titan bounty loot, because the battle items and the Titan parts are kind of just a waste of everybody's time. The truth is, we use a fair amount of battle items on these Titans, especially when we're talking 15-star plus Titans, right? So if you're giving me 2 mana pots, like I'm not trying to be rude, but like who the heck cares? Like, quite frankly, I use probably 10 times that much just killing the Titan. So getting 2 back is not really much value. In fact, it's kind of just silly. So I don't love that. Titan parts, well, I mean, I think we all get enough of those from the Titan already. So I don't know anyone who's really particularly hurting for Titan parts. It also seems kind of trashy to get that as your sort of premium bonus loot. So what I would like them to consider doing is making the bare minimum for a Titan bounty 1 to 2 Master Emblems. I would love it to be 2. I would love them to give like 2 Master Emblems of a particular type for each Titan killed as the low-end bounty loot. But I don't know if they're willing to do that. You might say, maybe that sounds crazy too, but the truth is we need 50. Remember, that's 50 of a singular type to level a singular character all the way up in Master Talents. So even if you were getting 2 emblems, 2 Master Emblems a day out of Titans, right? And you aren't going to be able to control which ones you get, so it's not like you can stack the type you need. But at most, let's say there were 30 Titans you killed that month. That's 60 Master Emblems. So you'd really get enough to do 1 character a month on average, and it probably would take you a month or 2 to even get any of that rolling because you can't pick which Master Emblems you get either. So with that in mind, just understand that like it's not a crazy concept to think that you can make the floor of this 2 Master Emblems and let people feel like they're gaining something of value out of these Titan kills. I definitely recommend it. I hope that they will consider doing that for us moving forward. And last but not least, I want to touch on one more thing that I think is pretty cool, and it's the auto feeding of heroes. They've been working on this for a while, and they keep getting better with it, and I'm thankful for it. So now they've trained the computer programming to create the best use of your heroes possible. So in other words, when you auto feed, it's not going to overfeed your character anymore. It's going to stop when you reach a 100% chance for skill up, so you're not going to waste feeders in that department either. These are the types of things that are just a general benefit for us that I definitely think we should be thankful for, because previous to that, we had to sit there and try to finagle it ourselves. It just saves us time, energy, and effort, and it's the type of improvement that I look forward to seeing more of in the future. All right, thank you, everyone. I think we covered these changes. Let's move on to our next section. Okay, the next important topic for us to touch on that happened in this previous month is going to be the summon, or the Fated Summon fiasco that occurred. I think the general populace is pretty aware of what occurred here, but let's go into a description of what happened. So, we did get a new list of Fated Summon heroes available that popped up. When the list popped up at changeover for that particular day, there was an error in the coding that basically said if you turned in your 100 summons, which quite a few people have saved up and then turned in, you were able to not only select a hero, but instead select all of the heroes. There was no limit included. So you could literally turn in your 100 summons and get all 20 of the available heroes. This bug was only up for about an hour before Small Giants and Empires and Puzzles team kind of figured it out, shut it down, and reassess the situation and then put it back up correctly. However, this hour, since quite a few people were waiting for this changeover to see the new characters and select them, it allowed for quite a few players to have an opportunity to um, take advantage of the opportunity of their mistake and collect 20 heroes instead of a singular hero. This has created a huge wave of drama in the player community, as quite a few people have been upset that these players got 20 heroes. Basically, 20 heroes is enough for a full soul exchange, right? The top tier soul exchange, you can get it for free basically because they gave you 20 heroes. And so a lot of people, I think, lived in a little bit of FOMO, like the fear of missing out, right? So there was a lot of anger and upset. They're like, well, I could have really used 20 heroes for my roster too, etc., etc. It's not fair that they got this, I did not. Lots of that, and I understand that that is the case. It's definitely not fair that people who logged in and took advantage of this ended up with 20 heroes. So let's see, how did Empires and Puzzles and Small Giant sort of handle this situation? Well, they immediately announced that they were going to remove those characters from the players who took the 20 characters, which of course makes sense, right? You think to yourself, yeah, that's absolutely what you should do. Take back those characters. They really only deserved one, etc., etc. The problem with that is that although that sounds great on the surface, if you know anything about coding and how games work, etc., that is a lot easier said than done. Once these characters selected their, or once these players selected their 20 characters, it was kind of like opening Pandora's box. There was no way to neatly shut it again and put it all back into the box and pretend it never happened. It just wasn't going to happen. Yes, it would be possible, but not without painstakingly long amount of hours and manpower to comb through all of the accounts that had access to these, figure out which ones were selected, remove them, etc. It would be so much harder than it actually sounds. So I knew that that solution probably was not going to be the one that they stuck with, even though I understand why they said it right away, because it logically makes sense. It just wasn't going to be feasible. So then, after a little bit of time, they released an announcement saying, look, the players who took these characters are going to be able to keep them. The players who were online at the time and only selected a singular hero, we're going to send you some rewards. And this included 5 tokens that let you automatically summon a Season 1 5-star and a bunch of other interesting things. And it was sort of a reward for not exploiting the system. They were like, hey, look, you didn't take advantage like these guys did. So, like, we're proud of you. Here's your reward for doing the right thing, even though you were given an opportunity to take more than you deserved. Um, but this created still quite a bit of drama within the community because everyone else is like, well, wait a second. So you're telling me the people who took the 20 characters get to keep them, and just because I wasn't on in that hour, I don't have that same advantage? I can't get those 20 characters? That's hardly fair. And the other people got these 5 tokens. Why don't I get these 5 tokens? There was a lot of that. And I think that, again, this is the fear of missing out. Like, an opportunity was there. You didn't get it. Now you're upset that someone else got something you did not. But in reality, and I've explained this to other people that I know who have been talking about this, you didn't actually lose anything. No one lost anything in the situation, right? Like, if you weren't online to take advantage of this, or you didn't have enough summons to activate it, or whatever the case may be, you are literally out nothing. You were exactly where you were the night before. The difference is that somebody else has something that you did not. Someone else gained an opportunity to gain these 20 characters. Someone else got sent a reward of 5 additional poll tokens and various other things. Like, and that's not necessarily fair. I agree, that's not necessarily fair. But the reality is, fair is a subjective thing, right? There is not necessarily a clear right or wrong. Your opinion of what fair might be in the situation can vary from someone else's opinion of it. And I think the most important thing to cover is the fact that this is Small Giant's choice on how to handle this situation. And so they gave us their approximation of what was fair. So at this point, the only people that they were rewarding were the players who were online at that particular time. But this still created a huge uproar in the forums and in different communities and all of that. Facebook was going crazy. So they came to terms with the fact that they weren't going to get away with not addressing this for the rest of the player base. And that's when they took another day and decided to release rewards to everybody of 5 golden emblems. These 5 golden emblems, I think, honestly, it's a pretty nice reward. I think the golden emblems was a good choice. Every single player in the game is going to be able to make use of that. Whether you're a super elite player or a fairly new player, everybody can make use of these 5 golden emblems. And the truth is, again, it's important to remember, you didn't really lose anything in this situation. So the truth is, you gained 5 golden. Everybody at least gained 5 golden emblems. But some other players did gain 20 heroes, which that's great for them. Unfortunately, that was an opportunity that was only presented in that slim period of time, and if you got to take advantage of it, amazing for you. There are a lot of people are saying, they did the wrong thing, they deserve to be punished. I don't know if I agree with that statement in this particular case, because they didn't necessarily hack the system or anything like that. They took advantage of an opportunity that was presented to them. In other words, it allowed them to select all these characters and take them, and they simply selected all the characters and took them. Yes, they understood it should have probably only been one, but in a game like this, right, where it's a gotcha game, right, you're spending all this money, you're pulling all these things, odds aren't really favorable to us in most situations. This is a bit of a role reversal. This is a moment where the players were the one to get the gotcha, right? The players got the advantage over the game developers in this scenario, and I don't necessarily blame them for taking it, because the odds will always be on the developer side, where they're making money and you're probably spending a lot of energy and effort into getting things that may or may not come up for you. How many times have you done, 10 polls and just never gotten anything, right? Understand that in this moment, they were presented an opportunity, they just took it. Yeah, it's probably not 100% morally correct, but this is all gambling, right? Like, this entire game is based off of gambling, which in its own way is not really morally correct. So you just got to keep perspective on that and understand where we're at. And I guess the most important thing to cover is the fact that we did all gain at least 5 golden emblems. So at the end of the day, this was probably a win for everybody if you try to look at it in that light. Okay, so that covers our Fated Summon Fiasco. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. All right, everyone. So let's get into the meta changes that we had for this particular month. I usually go over this just to give everyone an idea of what's going on with raids and wars, and in general, where things seem to be trending, where things seem to be sort of downscaling. So in this department, I would say it's pretty easy to tell that Mega Minions within the current meta are still on a downward trend. The amount of characters that have been released that are direct counters to Mega Minions has really caused them to drop off quite a bit in their power level, and because of that, we're seeing significantly less of them used in wars and raiding. They are still there because there's still some very viable characters, but the reality is you are creating a liability counting on that Mega Minion to keep you alive now, as opposed to before all these counters existed. So understand that in this particular department, you're seeing a lot less of that. The next up, I would say mana manipulation has still been on the rise. Whether it's increasing your own party's mana or reducing the opposing party's mana, we are seeing a ton of these characters getting play. Whether it be Fergus or Hrothgar or any of these characters, even like Mena or Luna, if you're still at lower levels, all of these characters are making significant comebacks within the metas and creating havoc. I do expect to see more teams based around mana generation too. Nautica's fallen off a bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing new characters released that are doing very similar effects of increasing mana. So just expect that to be a trend for the up and coming future. The next up is Reflect. Reflect is all over the meta right now, whether it be from Glass Heroes that just naturally reflect, or characters that allow your team to reflect. It has been a very prevalent thing so that you can turn your opponent's strengths into their weaknesses, and I do expect to see a lot more of that in the current meta. Then, if it's not Reflect, the next big thing has been debuff protection. There are a ton of characters out right now that are offering this debuff protection, and people are on it. So if you are not going up against a team that reflects, there's a very good chance you're going up against a team that buffs itself from debuffs, which is once again making things a lot harder for dots and other effects to currently be doing their maximum potential in raiding and wars currently. So I will say we're living in a meta where straight damage attacks seem to be having a lot more viability right now as opposed to where they were before. So characters that aren't relying on a specific type of damage, etc., no dots or things like that, are really much harder to deal with right now because of the way that everyone is stacking all these characters that are stopping debuffs and other effects like that. So understand that that's where the meta is currently at. You want to focus on relatively good hitters that aren't relying too hard on debuffs currently. You do want to protect your team from mana manipulation, whether that be, carrying Toon costumes again instead that have a 75% chance to resist mana reductions, to families like Beowulf or the Astral Dwarves. They resist mana reductions. All of that fun stuff, those are the types of characters I think that are going to serve you well in our current meta. So as you're preparing for this next month, that would be my advice, and we will see what develops over the next month, and of course I will update you that in the following month to come. So let us move into the very last part of this video, which is the August calendar review, and we will look forward to that. Okay, so moving on to the last part of our video today, let's go over the calendar for August 2025. And let's see, here we'll start things out at the top here. This is the end of this month. And moving over to the first, we are in this first weekend right now because I actually am putting this out a little bit late because of the Gem Challenge poll yesterday. I just figured I'd release it, and this way there would be less distraction involved, and hopefully more people will want to take a look at this rather than be distracted by whether they should do the Gem polls challenge. So moving on, we have here starting the War of Three Kingdoms, which just began this morning, which is fantastic. I do love War of Three Kingdoms. I think they have some of the cooler characters in the game currently with the new Outlaws family. We also have the Tremors of the Underwild going on. And into next week, we are going to see a couple fun things. We have a Dragon Quest for the Ancient Underroot. We'll have Dunes next week, starting on Wednesday. Then we also have the Challenge Festival coming on Friday. Challenge Festival 2 this time around is going to be featuring, to my knowledge, costumes for circus heroes as well as a brand new bard. So I don't think we'll see Beowulf this month around. I think they did the bards, and that's okay. I do love Beowulf characters, but it's important for us to get some love for these older characters too. Making some of them relevant is a fun idea, so I like that. Now let's talk about getting some costumes out there for pets and Three Musketeers and all these other fun families that we would love to see the costumes for. All right, and then we also have Untold Tales 2 starting next week. I almost didn't see it down there at the bottom. That'll be starting on Wednesday. Untold 2 is always a fantastic setup. We will most likely be seeing more of the Ice Core heroes, and yeah, I really have enjoyed that family, both the fire and the ice, so I'm looking forward to see what they release next. Moving on to the following week, the Monday the 11th. Well, actually, that weekend looks like Costumer comes actually on Sunday the 10th, but then it will be moving into Monday the 11th. We also have Contest of Elements starting that week. That is going to be blue again. This particular Contest of Elements starting on the 12th is going to have both the Super Elemental costume and Gloozmer, who came out in this Super Elemental portal that's up currently. I do think it's probably the better of the two to pull in just because the Super Elemental costumes are kind of fun, but you also get the brand new slime, so if you haven't done your polls yet for Contest of Elements, maybe consider holding on to them till the mid-month one. All right, then we also have Atlantis Rising way down here on the 15th. That's always a great one for farming just pure mats, whether you're low on backpacks or feeder troops or whatever the case may be. Atlantis Rising is some of the best farming in the game because it gets the boosted rewards from farming. Then they gave us, on Thursday the 14th, the Night of the Moth events back. So at this particular point, I'm not sure what to expect. I do know that there will be a Slow Purple Healer coming out sooner or later. This might be the month for that, so we'll see what they release. Then we have the following week, and here it looks like on the 19th, they're going to be giving us a Goblin Village as well as an Ancient Underroot. Now, my personal opinion on this is I would absolutely love to see them release some new goblins. Look, the age of the Mega Minion is dying. I think we all understand that. Now is a perfect opportunity for them to pay more attention to the forgotten family of the goblins. The truth is, it's called the Goblin Portal, and we have not seen a goblin in well over a year. So I think it's time for them to spend some time figuring out what they want to do with goblins and release some new ones. All right, then also on Wednesday the 20th, we have Tower of Magic. Tower of Magic is not necessarily the most fun to clear because of all the additional levels they put in there, but I have really been enjoying the characters that they released. The Magic Carpet family with their full flight momentum is a lot of fun, as well as the costumes for some of these older characters has been nice to see as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they release for this month's Tower of Magic. And then on the Thursday the 21st, we have Untold Mysteries of the Deep. Now, again, we're done with costumes for Untold 1. My question is, are they done with Untold 1? Or are they going to consider releasing new characters for this portal? They certainly have the ability to do so. They've introduced new families in other portals before, so perhaps it's just time for us to see new characters for the Untold 1 portal. Or I guess they could just keep cycling through the costumes, but I think without creating some sort of new feature to it, that portal is going to get sort of pushed to the side for Untold 2 most of the time. Okay. Then down here, we have the Astral Planes. So the dwarves are coming in to hang out with us on Sunday the 24th. The Astral Dwarves are great. I love them. They're passive to resist the mana reduction. Super useful. I would love to get my hands on some, but they have been avoiding me so far. Then we have Valhalla Forever. Shadows of the Deep will be returning on Tuesday the 26th. Shadows of the Deep portal, very mixed reviews for me. I'm not a huge fan of the Insanity mechanic, but they are sought after by a lot of people, and the additional pulls you can get for getting a 5-star is super fun. Then also towards the end of the week, we have another Contest of Elements. I can only assume that this is going to be a different color than blue, but I don't think they specify here which one to expect. So at the very tail end of the month, we will have one more Contest of Elements. And most importantly, right there on the 29th, we are looking at Soul Exchange. So that gives us basically less than 30 days to collect additional souls to turn in. You might want to start looking at your roster, figuring out what you have, whether you think you're going to need to make some tough cuts, because I expect them to come with a pretty strong roster this time around. I think they're starting to understand that with the power creep that they're doing with their characters, they need to start offering better offerings in these things as well. So we should see a pretty interesting list this time around. Hopefully we'll get some costumes in there, because that always seems to be the cream of the crop, in my personal opinion. So consider getting Soul Exchange characters with costumes if they're available. I look forward to that. All right, other than that, we have a War of Three Kingdoms, it looks like, at the very tail end of the month as well. It looks like on the 30th, we'll get one more War of Three Kingdoms. I say keep those coming. I do love the War of Three Kingdoms. All right, everyone. So I hope this gives you an idea of what to expect for the upcoming month, and I do look forward to doing this again next month. Again, this is a newer series that I've added, so I am hoping to be able to continue to do this once a month for years to come. And it is fun, too, because you could always look back later and see where the game was at and what was going on a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, if I keep this up correctly. So I think it's sort of like a little time capsule effect as well. So, all right, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time.